Greetings, everybody. It's Patricia Berry from the Salte Fundraiser, and I am continuing my series, which is brief love letters to badass women. And it's women that I work with and partner with, and really who, I don't know, overall just like inspire me and make me work better, and really just have been terrific creative collaborators for me in this weird little community outside of Detroit in Southeast Michigan. Who knew I would meet such talented boss ladies? So who I have with me here today is Yen Azzaro. And she is from, she's a graphic recorder among a million other talented artistic things. But she does graphic recording at the paperpusher.co. So that's where you can find her. And Yen in our little community, she's a mentor. She does big art projects like murals. She at one point was leading a nonprofit. Are you still leading the nonprofit?
And I worked with various nonprofits, but
okay.
Not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Working with kids, doing big murals, and just doing really creative, wonderful things for our community. They're all really inspiring, as well as doing this thing called graphic recording, which I never knew was a thing until I met Yen, which is taking, making a visual representation of a conversation. And I really highly recommend go out to the paperpusher.co, and you'll see some terrific examples of how she could come to your meeting and do a beautiful graphic recording. My love letter to Yen is very much in that space, in that I have a tendency to talk visually about really complicated concepts, right? So as I'm like talking about, you know, the donor journey or the relationship cycle, and Yen experienced me trying to draw those things on the board in the middle of the meeting, which I'm an enthusiastic artist, but perhaps I left a little to be desired. And so Yen, you'll see her on my website. She and I have done a couple of visual conversations together where she made what I was speaking about accessible in a way with images, and I couldn't even imagine that it was possible. And I remember when that first one that we did together, which I believe was the relationship circle, like afterwards I was just like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. And I have clients that say to me all the time, like, oh, I totally get it. You know, watching the images come through in Yen's drawings, and I may or may not be explaining this really right, but go out and look at the paperpusher.co. Go look at the relationship cycle on my website, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. That Yen's ability to capture an idea in an icon, in a visual map, you know, just really blows my mind. Like it's a tremendous creative ability to manifest people's conversations in a way that I just find really awe-inspiring, and I know just makes my work better every time we work together. So that's just one of the things that I love about Yen that I have to include in my love letter. But just so talented and an inspiring business leader. She teaches me things all the time when we work together, even if sometimes it's just how to be a little gentle. So Yen, aside from my love letter to you, we're also here for Women's Month, and I wanted to give everybody the opportunity, whether you're salty or not, to talk a little bit. What do you want on Women's Month? You know, whether it's other women to hear or whether it's people other than women to hear, like what question do you really want to address in these love letters during Women's Month?
Oh, thank you so much, Patricia. I am so touched, first, that you asked, and just for all the beautiful things that you just said. Your generosity is always overflowing, and I'm so grateful for you and our friendship. So thank you. When you asked me what I was salty about, I just feel like the last 2 years has been this culmination of everything leading up to the closure and the shuttering of my business. So before COVID, and I've done some of these with you, I was going into a lot of corporate or nonprofit physical spaces, traveling to spaces with a large roll of paper and markers. And I would set up and I would be the silent person in the room. Sometimes I would present what I had drawn. But it made me think back, this time as we're starting to enter back into the world again, has made me think about the instances in which I always thought it was an intersection of me being an Asian American and a woman, about these uncomfortable moments that I would stumble upon, or somebody would kind of perpetrate against me. You know, it was like these largely male dominated spaces. I've had clients whisper in my ear, like whisper directives, whisper like, what can I get you? Or touch, you know, the small of my back. I had a client who, I got there 45 minutes early, got set up. This is for a big corporate company. It was a small consulting team for their president. And I got there early, set up my things. I had requested one table, one chair, and I only sit when I'm eating lunch. Went to the restroom. And when I came back, all of my things had been rearranged. Like the order of my markers had been the way that I needed them to be. They were slid over to the other side of the table. My coat was moved like from over here to over there in a large room where there were only 8 people. It was just the ickiness of the control that came
and
out
invading
of
your space.
So
I think sometimes
invasive.
I recognize this on just the female front.
Mm-hmm.
Being in big corporate spaces, or in my case, often, in rooms, doing fundraising, right? Doing the relationship work, where often I'm dealing with very high net worth individuals who are male, and I'm the only person in the room, and people men feel comfortable touching me. Which is like really weird when you really think about it. Like, and I would constantly like just kind of dampen that down, like, oh, they're just being friendly.
Yeah.
But it would be like steering me to a different place in the room, or
yes. Oh, so awful. Because they wouldn't do that to another. Presumably, if the situation was like a cisgender straight man, they wouldn't do that to another cisgender straight man, right? Like, it just, all kinds of things made me question, what is it about me? And so rather than embarrassing them and calling them out, I, like you said, I would just dampen the feeling. And I'd say, oh, I don't want to humiliate my client because I'm being paid to be here or whatnot. And then, that coupled with the fact that over the last 2 years, there's just been this incredible, more visible movement of violence against AAPI, Asian Americans, and predominantly women and seniors. I feel like what we've been left with as a byproduct of the pandemic is really an endemic of acceptable violence against people that look like me. And I am not excited to go back to work in person because of that, because of the way that I've been treated in the past, or the way I've been spoken to or put in place, a place that I didn't mean to fall into. And so your questions just triggered all of these really, I guess, overwhelming professional and personal feelings all at once. And I'm incredibly grateful to have this space to take up, but it reminds me that I need to really be better about taking up space in the real world, right? Like, not just saying, I'm not going to make you feel uncomfortable just because you made me feel uncomfortable. That was the way that I used to feel. And now I feel like I can really verbalize through the work that we've done mutually through Champions for Change, that journey. I'm sure we both did so much work through that.
So I was going to mention, so Yen and I were both part of a wonderful program here in Southeast Michigan called Champions for Change. Yen was the season ahead of me. So she went through the program and then provided great mentorship and inspiration to everybody who went through it the second year. And I just had on this love letters to badass women, Sharonda Simmons, who went through Yen's cohort. And what she talked about was the power of no. And, you know, when I think about the Great Resignation and all the people who were like, I suddenly realized when I had a break from it, how uncomfortable it was to be in the presence of microaggressions that I just glossed over because it was just so much happening all the time, every moment. And what Sharonda talked about was the power of no. Like, no is a complete sentence, you know, and
Absolutely.
also recognizing my privilege and saying no is much different. You know, I recognize my white privilege in being able to say no in spaces that may be affected by the fact that I'm a female, but also is, I'm safer often than BIPOC people, AAPI, who are laying down the groundwork for like, no, you don't get to touch me. No, you don't get to touch my stuff. No, you don't get a whisper in my ear, you creepy dude. Right?
Yes.
So, you know, I don't know where we go from there, because you and I both have talked about this, like, we're women running our own business. And, you know, to a certain extent, my livelihood is based on having as many clients as I can have, right? If I start holding clients to account, there's that economic risk, right? Will it tar me in the industry? Will it, you know, lose me significant money? And yet, you know, this is what I talk to with my clients in fundraising. We are defined by who we say no to, you know, how we say no. So I don't know if any of that has kind of percolated as you are emerging, right? You've had all that experience that you're starting to recognize. Like, have you had any thoughts about like, what's the way forward?
Yeah. And very coincidentally, one of the experiences that I had with the client that touched my back and got very, very close to me a couple times, that a colleague of that person actually came back and requested for me to do an in-person event a few months ago. And I said, and I asked them, you know, will this person be there? And this is specifically why. And this was somebody that I didn't know, but I felt like as a woman, I was comfortable sharing my account with her. And she was appalled and assured me that this was going to be a different group of clients and that particular person wouldn't be there. And even though I didn't say anything at the time, the point person that I worked with called me. And we just had an opportunity to both say, what would we do differently now? Should we do anything about what happened in the past? And I have since then worked with her again. And so it felt like we had this new ground, a new understanding for, you know, if you're going to hire me and something like this happens, I'm going to say something. And she was apologetic, which I didn't expect. I didn't need her to be, but it was so heartening. And I just felt like I had such solidarity and safety in having said something. And if I hadn't, and I had just kept working it or just waited for it to happen again or to seize up because something like that could repeat itself, I wouldn't have felt whole. I wouldn't have felt whole in doing the work or being myself or being in that space. And so you're so right. Who you say no to completely identifies your brand and the integrity of the work. And also, I realized that during the pandemic, 87% of my clients are nonprofit. And 2021 was a great year. And I didn't go seeking human-centered or very socially responsible and minded folks like you. It just, the attraction begot more attraction to socially minded organizations. And it just worked out that way. And I really, really believe in that power of good begets more good.
And the
so I
space you
found
make
that-
by shutting a door.
Yes. Yeah. You shut that door and another window opens somewhere else. I really, really believe that.
Totally believe that too.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Yen. I really love this conversation. And I think it's, it feels very real and very visceral to me. Like once somebody starts naming that,
Mhm.
it's kind of like, oh, that something similar, something resonant has happened for me as well. And I recognize that I didn't say the thing that I should have probably said,
Yeah. And it doesn't make it easier, but it lets the other person know this is who you're dealing with.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you
this
so
has
much.
been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Yen. You're my hero.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Bye.